salute?
Certainly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine Law statement. All requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the Record and Town News and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darien, would you read the mission statement?
The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, and responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Castro?
Here.
Mr. Griffin? Mrs. Levy?
Here.
Mrs. Norian?
Here.
Ms. Shapiro? Mrs. Walker? Here. Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Darien?
Here.
Mrs. Nichols?
Here, open to the public for agenda items only. I'm glad we have such a huge public here today to welcome you to your first meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to your report.
Okay, good evening. My name is Barbara Longo, and I am the new interim superintendent. I'm delighted to be here and working with your children and the wonderful staff of teachers and administrators that you have here. Unfortunately, one of my first charges here in Oradell has been dealing with the COVID-19. As soon as I could, I made introductions and became acquainted with the Bergen County offices. They, along with the New Jersey Department of Education and the New Jersey Department of Health, have been most helpful with guidance and advisement as we monitor this serious health issue. Today, we met with the Oradell OEM to share protocols and measures that both the school and the municipality are taking. We are receiving broadcasts from the NJDOE daily with most recent updates. One of the key points of interest is that the state DOE is asking us to have plans in place for home instruction in the event that we are directed to close our school. Should that be the case, the days that we are closed would be counted towards our required 180 days of instruction. However, any closures made without a directive from the Department of Health will not count towards our required 180 days. Our teachers have been working diligently to make sure the lessons are tailored to each grade level and are appropriate and timely. You should have already received a letter from Ms. Bozius regarding technology needs so that we can make sure each and every child has the tools that they need. Of course, here in our school, we continue to be extra vigilant in the cleaning of our building. The district has incorporated additional disinfecting measures to help reduce the potential spread of any infectious disease, viruses, and communicable diseases. These are in addition to our standard procedures during the cold and the flu season. Our administrators are monitoring attendance and following any cluster of absences. Teachers have been reminding students about hand washing, and in addition to that, our principal and her team and the school nurse are visiting all classrooms this week to reinforce the proper procedures for maintaining good habits with a focus on preventive measures. New lunch procedures have been put in place to ensure a safe handling of foods. Ms. Bozius and her staff have identified a location for any students who show symptoms and require a room away from all other students. As of this moment, we are not canceling school. If any changes are sent down to us from the New Jersey Department of Health, I will relay them to the public as soon as possible. Thank you. I just have a couple of other things. I want to say that on Monday, March 2nd, I had the opportunity to read to a classroom for Read Across America Day. It was a huge success, and I really, really enjoyed reading to the preschool children. This is something that I wasn't used to, that age group, but they did a great job organizing it, and it was a really nice day for all of the students. The other thing is, I guess this is something that's done at every board meeting, the enrollment. Total student enrollment as of February 29th was 764, and the student attendance for the month of February was 94.92%. That is my report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Momora?
So just a couple of changes to upcoming board meetings that I'd like to point out. So our March 25th meeting has been changed to March 18th. It'll take place here, 7:30 p.m. in the auditorium where the tentative budget will be presented. And also, we're going to be having a special meeting on April 1st at 7:30 here in the auditorium where Mr. Matt Lee from New Jersey School Boards will present on community engagement. And that's my report.
Thank you. Can you just make sure that April 1st meeting is added to the website? Because I don't think it's on that list yet. So let's put it on there. Before we move to our report, I forgot. Our teams were in Odyssey, and I heard we did pretty good. Do you know, Ms. Bozios?
First place.
Wait, come up here and tell us. What do we do?
First place.
Woo! Woohoo! Can you give us a report with your science report on Odyssey? Since you're up next.
Excuse me, if I could just say, I noticed that on the school calendar that comes out for March, it's still listed for the 25th for our second board meeting. Is it too much to ask to update or no?
The paper calendar or the digital calendar?
The digital.
That I can do.
Awesome, thank you.
The paper calendar gets a little, because parents already have that PDF and they don't print it out again.
Thank you.
So about Odyssey, what was really exciting was 2 years ago when Odyssey changed from 2 regional tournaments to 3 regional tournaments, they reduced the number of teams that qualify for the state tournament. You now need to place in the top 2 to qualify. We had 8 teams in our division, including Millburn. And Millburn, well, we have a little bit of a rivalry going. So they did place second. So we will once again see Millburn at the state tournament. But what tells you a little bit about how well our students prepared was they actually didn't finish their long-term problem. It happens every once in a while, but once time hits, they can't be judged for anything after it, and they still won that portion of the competition. So I was incredibly proud of them. Many of them also went this week to last weekend to one of the other regional tournaments, yes, to scout out the competition. And also, we do have developed this relationship with the Carteret Middle School, and they went to cheer on their friends at Carteret this weekend.
What's the next step?
We moved to the state tournament on April 4th at Princeton High School, where Mr. Walsh will once again be judging.
Okay, April 4th.
I didn't have the Oradell Public School in my judgment. They might have kept it away, but I did have Millburn. Millburn had a couple of schools, a couple of classes.
Yes, that's why they're the competition. Okay, so switching gears, my task today is not as principal, but as district testing coordinator. And while I gave you the district testing report about math and language arts in the fall, we have been anxiously waiting science test results. Our science test was administered in May to our 5th graders. Now, that's a change. I've actually never given a report on test science testing results while the test has been given to 5th graders. Previously, it was given to 4th graders under the name New Jersey Ask. When the nation changed their standards to the Next Generation Science Standards, and then New Jersey changed their standards to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, Science, which are pretty much the same set of standards with a little minor tweaking, we got a new assessment. It was administered for the first time in the spring of 2018, so that's our current 7th graders. So we gave this assessment and we prepared our students for it, and we got no results. It was truly a pilot year where the questions were being checked for validity and reliability. So they gave the district nothing. So we were anxiously awaiting this year. Once again, our current 6th graders in May of last year, after they had taken math assessments, after they had taken language arts assessments, we had them sit for 2 days of science assessments. And we've waited. And on Friday, test results finally came in. So 2 months before we actually give them again, they gave us some test results. So it's a little hard to use that to inform and change instruction. We know our students. Test scores typically validate what we already know and what we can already know that we need to improve on. So Some of the other things that I'd like you to know is that I am more than willing to do a Bergen County eye comparison of our data like we do with our other pieces of data. The state just hasn't released that yet, so we'll need to wait a little bit. This data, when you turn the page to the statistics, you're going to go, what the heck? This is a test that we have normally scored as fourth graders a 98% passing rate. This is not uncommon, okay? Principals across the county are calling at each other in a panic right now. I truly believe that that is why the state has chosen not to include this data in our school performance report. You will very likely hear in the paper over the next week that the state has posted on their website district performance reports. While our science scores are there, they were not used for any accountability formulas. So how did we do? Well, first of all, when we look at this data, it's important to notice that the scoring levels are actually different for science than they are for math and language arts. We know in math and language arts we have 5 different scoring levels, and in science we only have 4. And you'd think it'd be really nice if somebody would label these for us, but we're kind of left to do that to ourselves on our own. So we know that level 3 over here is passing. If you get a 200, you have passed the assessment, you have met the standards. Level 4 is exceeding the standards. Level 1 and 2, they really don't differentiate. I guess you can say almost at the standards, very far below the standards. I do want to start with that first row because while we consistently say we expect to score better than the state average, we do need to pay attention to that variable. What is the state average? So what you're going to notice is less than 30% of students across the state of New Jersey that took the 5th grade New Jersey Science Learning Assessment in May passed. This was a hard assessment. It was no longer good enough to regurgitate information. It is not a recall assessment. Students needed calculators to manipulate data. They needed to be able to look at diagrams, draw diagrams, critique diagrams. It was demanding, and I think if you talk to any students that took it, they would tell you that after it. So while no, the first thing I did was say, with a passing rate of 60.7%, that seems really low, but the fact is, we more than doubled the state. And I think what we're going to find, based on my confidential conversations with principals across the Bergen County, that we actually did the same or actually better than many of our comparison schools. One of the requirements of the state is that we look at the data through the lens of different subgroups, and I like to do this all the time anyway. You'll remember that when I gave the language arts and math assessment this year, one of the areas I was most proud of was our male increase in language arts. And I attributed that to, we really were deliberate in making sure there was more choice in the text that students were reading in the classroom. We weren't saying to boys, you gotta go read Sarah Plain and Tall, which they have nicknamed over the years Sarah Bad and Boring. Okay, we were saying, what is it you want to read? Because we will teach you the skills that you need as a good reader in any text. Okay, and so the one thing that I do notice when I look at the gender is the doubling of females in level 1. And when I looked at that, there were definitely students that I was surprised about. And so that's something that I really want to talk with our 5th grade science teachers. How are we engaging? And we all always bring our personal to everything. And I know who I was as an elementary school student. I love to read, I love to write, and I love the problems of math. I stopped listening during science. So what are we doing to ensure that all our students are engaged in science? Because I have a feeling that might be what's at play with that female score there. We also look at this data through an ethnicity and race subgroup. I wasn't finding a ton of things standing out there. The results are pretty consistent. And then we move to looking at the data for students with identified needs. And immediately one of the things that Ms. Disler and I began talking about was our special needs students, specifically our students with IEPs, where we saw that there was only a combined score of 3 or 4 for 10.5 students out of 20. That turns out to be pretty much about 2 students. So if only 2 students are passing that, what do we need to do? And when we get to the last page, I'm going to tell you what we've already done this year. We have more to do, but we know that we've already put some structures in place to improve that. I've always said that one of the reasons that I think that the board and I have seen eye to eye on so many things is I actually like data as much as you like data. And one of the things that I'm always looking for is patterns. As much as we say that the state isn't our comparison group, it tells us a lot about assessments. So I found this specific slide interesting but confusing, because these little bars where the green is the students that are exceeding, the purple are meeting or almost meeting, and the yellow are not meeting, I found a little hard to read. So what I chose to do was to take that information and to take the purple group and the green group, so meeting, partially meeting, and exceeding, and look at it through a graph. Because what we know about data is that I get really excited about it and I take the microphone down. What we know about data is that the slope of data, the slope of a line, should be kind of consistent. And even though our scores are higher than the state, that the shape of the line should be the same as the states. So we want to show equal growth in all of those areas. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is that when we look at earth science at the state level, so that's the red line, you'll notice that it's almost equal to life science across the state, but we show a dip. So earth science is something I'd like to look at in our curriculum to say, is it something that we're glossing over? Is there a unit that could be beefed up? Is there more that we can do in the science lab related to earth science? And it's important to remember that the NJSLA science assessment is not just fifth grade, it's a cumulative of what students should know up to fifth grade, okay? So it's not just looking at earth science in that grade, it's looking at earth science across time. But also what I noticed is, look at how on the red line, when we go from investigating practices to sense-making practices, the state has a huge dip, and we don't. So something is happening in our curriculum, and if you go back to the slide before, because sense-making practices, you're like, what's that? It's a focus on asking questions and conducting experiments about the natural world. Something in our curriculum is doing that really well, and we want to make sure we keep doing it. So my job as district testing coordinator and my job as principal as I'm guiding staff is to really say, we know this data isn't giving us tons, but what are the little pieces that we can pull from it? So that's two pieces that we've pulled from it. Let's make sure that our earth science standards are being met, and let's also make sure that whatever we did for sense making, let's talk about it. What exactly did that mean to us, and what were the lessons we taught that helped that occur? As I said, Mr. Darian once said that data is nothing without the story behind it. So the story of the data is also, what are we going to do with it? So we've already, thanks to Mr. Nomura, purchased a new product in an online science test preparation program. I'm not typically a big fan of test preparation, but the science assessment is so different than anything else our students do that I want to make sure that it's not the format of the assessment versus actual knowledge that's impacting students. So Mrs. Hawley and I were here on Saturday, and we looked at a whole bunch of different programs, and we found this one, and it was so reasonably priced. And as we also talked about our digital learning program, if school was to close, we said, this is actually a perfect tool for our fifth graders. So we get to use it for two different things, and I think that it's going to help our students be more familiar with, I like to call it, the genre of the test. We teach students how to read personal narrative. We teach students how to read informational text. We need to teach them how to read a test. Okay. We've also already increased the amount of support our special education students are getting during science and social studies blocks by using that as a time where we are co-teaching. So in grades 4, 5, and 6, during that time, if there are special needs students in the class, we have a general education teacher and a special education teacher in the room. That is not something that happened prior to this year. And again, as much as I want us to be the best at everything, I also think that we should look around us and see what we can learn. So as soon as those peer districts publish their results, one of my next steps will be to kind of call some people and say, what are you doing? We do have a different science resource. It's about 3 years old now, but we've never had a way to really evaluate is it getting the job done? So whenever test scores come out, if I see districts that I think are doing a really great job, I want to know how much time they're spending on that content area, what resource they're using in that content area, and if there's anything else they're attributing to their success. So that's some of our next steps. We're waiting for Mr. Fletcher and Dr. Bendo to decide when our scores go home, as we always do send them out together for the benefit of parents across the tri-district. Ours are already in envelopes ready to go, because we have a lot to do right now. And science test scores needed to just be done and in the corner, ready to go. That letter will have the score interpretation guide. It will have some links for the OPS science curriculum, so parents know what we are teaching, and it will tell them a little bit about the assessment. Do you have any questions for me?
I had questions, and then you answered all of them. Thank you. This was really thorough and very easy to understand.
Thank you,
and I
Mrs. Shapiro.
appreciate it.
I just have a question. You said that this testing happened after, so how many days of testing in a row are the kids?
This test, it was a little different last year than it will be this year. There was a different window for the science assessment, so they had about 3 weeks off before it.
Oh, okay.
We actually, because I do worry that we need a little extra time to get ready for it, we look at the window that the state gives, and I actually leave about 3 days at the end of the window, and then I test as late as I can.
Okay.
This year, the state made a change, and they did not give the science assessment a different window. We have to assess our science in the same window as we have to assess math, language, arts. Now, that's going to be really fun for us because we devised our whole calendar, including the OPS musical, on the previously published testing schedule. So I have a little work to do with readjusting our science dates. I think we're going to be able to do it after the musical, which would really be my hope. Anything else?
Any other questions?
This is just an observation that it's so interesting how the science testing and the demands of science and the testing has increased. So I can remember and going back quite a few years to New Jersey Ask and also ESPA's testing where we had science. And I remember the science grades would come back like 98 percentile and up in the very high percentiles because of the testing. And I remember one superintendent said, we have a district of illiterate scientists because the language arts tests were not where they should be, but the science was. So it shows you the level of difficulty and expectation in analyzing that was not in place years ago.
Right, and the truth is, this wasn't just the elementary assessment. I can't speak to the high school assessment, but I have spoken to Mr. Friedman at the middle school, and they saw similar results.
Really?
Yes. It's hard, and it's going to take us a while, just like, you know, if you think back to the first year we gave Park in language arts compared to this past year with, you know, huge percentage growth. Part of it is understanding better what needs to be taught, and part of it is understanding the game of testing.
Exactly.
We don't want to say that that's life, but in a way, that is part of the life our students are going to face in the world.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Bozios. You're welcome. Okay, we'll move to minutes. Review of February 26th. Any questions or comments, please email our board secretary. Right now, do I have a motion for the minutes of February 12th?
I move that we approve the minutes of February 12th.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Norian. Any questions? Call the question.
Mr. Castro?
Yes.
Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Committee actions, administrative, would you take that, Mr. Darian?
Yes. I'd like to introduce items A1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mrs. Shapiro?
So we had this on our previous agenda 2 weeks ago. We pulled it. I'm assuming there were no changes from the contract that we reviewed.
Right.
So I guess what struck me at the time, was that there was no rent involved with this program.
Right,
No,
because
no.
they give our staff a discount, so it's a benefit to our staff. But they will come in with their own insurance.
They do come in with their own insurance.
Yes.
And what was, remember the discount for the staff?
20%.
20%.
Are
And
there-
it'll be while the school's open, so.
Yeah, it's while the school's open in the afternoon.
So it doesn't include any additional
overtime, nothing.
overtime? Are they a for-profit school or not nonprofit, do we
St.
know?
Elizabeth's,
Is it?
yeah, it's a university now, I think, but
Is it-
college at least.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
I don't
In
know.
Morristown.
Okay.
I guess something to consider, which I know where Mr. Shapiro is going.
I guess I'm
I know
struggling.
we're opening it to our staff, and they have to have 8 to 10 people to run the class. But what would happen if none of our staff take it, and now just Riverdale
We
and
have
River
other
Edge?
people coming.
Now our staff is getting no benefit, and we're giving them our building for free.
Right, I guess, or if somebody else
should look into
comes.
that, right? We'll be
in-
careful.
In any
We have to have our staff in
situation,
there.
if somebody comes, they, the Y comes, they pay rent.
Right.
They're collecting, it is a benefit to our parents. I guess
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm struggling with. I'm not saying it is lovely to provide
Yeah.
education on site, and I think the contract also says we're promoting it for them within the district. Do we know if there's interest?
Well, we're going to send out a survey. You're going to send out
Yeah.
a survey.
Yeah, we're going to send out a survey. But if it's not our teachers, we won't.
We
then they can
just
go to
wouldn't do
Riverdale
it?
or somewhere
And
else.
how often would it be?
Well, that's when I spoke to the gentleman there, he said that would be up to whatever our teachers wanted. If they want 2 classes a week, or if they want 2 classes in one night, or if they only want 1 class a semester, that would be, they would run it anyway, or the teachers that register for it would like to have it.
I think that's going to be on the survey, you said, right?
Yeah.
Judy?
But
That's
if we
going on the
went
survey.
to have our play there, we would pay rent.
Say that again?
Like, if we used their facility for our benefit, for our students, we would have to pay them rent.
Yes,
I
we
guess
would.
that's what I'm struggling with a little bit.
Right.
I just looked it up, just so it is a nonprofit, private, Roman Catholic facility.
Okay.
Any other questions? Call the question.
Mr. Castro?
Yes.
Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
No.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Darian?
Yes, before I introduce this, the Building and Grounds Subcommittee had a meeting the other day last week, but the chairman forgot about it. And so I apologize, and we're rescheduling, so I have nothing to report. With that, I'd like to introduce item B1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions?
He wasn't the only one that missed the meeting.
Call the question.
Mr. Castro?
Yes.
Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Curriculum, Mrs. Norian?
Yes, there has been no meeting and no update at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a meeting on the schedule for?
I received a cancellation, but I didn't receive any.
For the next curriculum meeting, there's one on the... there's one
Probably
on the
next
calendar,
month.
right?
There's one on the calendar.
Yeah,
but
there's one on the calendar.
It will all
Okay.
depend on what we have to
Yeah.
address at that point in time.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's on an as-needed basis at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Finance, Mrs. Shapiro?
Finance met this evening a couple of hours ago. The chair did show up. Committee members arrived. if anybody wants to make a donation of a few $100,000. We want to do everything, and, you know, money's always tight, and that's being a public school, right? Before I introduce, I wanted to take a moment to highlight item D3. How cute is this? The Girl Scouts donated $100 for our library.
I think they've done it before.
It's so cute.
Right?
I don't know what grade this
Yeah.
is. Robin, was this any of your people? I have no idea.
I don't know
I don't know.
the age
It's so
group of this
sweet.
troop.
That's
both
really
yours?
sweet.
Yeah.
So they donated last year as kindergartners, and they decided they wanted to do it again as first graders, and it was trying to take books, postcards, and then always making a open display showing the school that came from that.
Oh, that's really sweet.
yeah.
That was very nice of them. Anyway, so this evening, I'd like to make a motion to approve items D1 through D5.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Mrs. Walker?
Quick question on D4. I see we paying the two sessions commencing October 1st, 2019. So we've been paying that without the approval here.
Well, we're revising it. I think we approved it for on 7.
One session,
Yeah, so I think we're
right.
just revising it. We approved it in August, so I think we just have to revise it.
Okay, with the increase in money.
I have a comment
Okay?
regarding D5. You know, Bergen Tech has been doing a great job, and we've been very happy with them. But, you know, we do pay them quite a bit of money, and lately we've been challenged, you know, from a technology standpoint with remote learning. So if it is possible, if we can get some maybe additional resources here. I know that we've reached out to them and they've advised us, but maybe some staff training, or, you know, maybe another person that would help out besides just the normal person we have here. You know, at this point in time, I don't think it would be uncalled for, you know, to ask for some additional assistance to help us set up for remote learning.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
We're closed right now.
Call the question?
Mr. Castro?
Yes.
Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Delegate report, Mr. Walsh.
I attended the legislative meeting on Saturday, and I left a packet in front of everybody with the minutes of the previous meeting and with a bill that's being brought forward. And it's S902, A969, clarifies statutory exemptions from mandatory immunization requirements for childcare center and school attendance. So you could take a look at it, and if you have any comments, you could either call school boards and make the comment, or you could bring it to the next meeting and I will get in touch with them.
When are you voting on this?
We're not voting. This is it's going to be a bill that the legislators are going to vote on.
Okay, but do you have to vote as delegates that school boards
No,
approves?
no, this
You wanna go or
this
no?
is going to come from the state.
Okay.
But one of the questions that was brought up was the adults that come into the building and first of all, the children that aren't immunized and the adults that aren't immunized and the teachers maybe that aren't immunized. Do you have to be immunized to be a teacher? And teach in Oradell Public?
I don't remember.
Well, what about it? Keep going.
No, that's just the question that
Oh.
they want me to bring forward to my district
Oh, okay.
and come back to them.
All right, so maybe Mrs. Longo could look into
Yeah.
that for us.
But the adults was the question, the teachers, the parents, and the kids themselves, too. The other thing that was discussed was planning for preschool expansion in New Jersey. There's a lot of money for expansion of the preschool in New Jersey, but unfortunately, Oradell does not make the list, is not entitled. So I will bring this into the superintendent and make copies. I only have one copy. Make copies and put it in everybody's packet for the next meeting.
Okay, that'd be great.
I have some comments on this proposed legislation. I have some concerns. I'm happy to call school boards or discuss it with you. It's not just adults. It removes the religious exemption that's in place in New Jersey, and it also severely limits students with medical issues that prevent them from getting vaccinated or further vaccinated. And I think that we need to be very cautious in dictating to people what has to go in their bodies. And if people have medical or religious exemptions, that should be respected. And that goes for adults and for children. That's my
Is
feeling.
it covered in this bill?
It is in this bill. It removes religious exemption.
Okay.
Any other comments? All right, personnel, Mrs. Walker?
Certainly. I'd like to present F1. I just wanted to say we had a meeting tonight, and it was a very productive one. No decisions have been made, and you'll see some of that information in your packet.
So you want to make your motion again?
Okay, sorry about that. I'd like to make a motion to move F1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Norian. Any questions? Call the question?
Mr. Castro?
Yes.
Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Norian?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes, policy, Mrs. Levy.
Yes, I just have a question. It is my understanding that we already have done G1.
I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I missed it, but did we do it finally?
Yeah, we did do
I thought we
G1.
did. I thought we accepted the whole book, right?
We
But I was
did.
like, maybe I missed it?
Should we check on that before?
Or should we just vote
Table
on
it.
it again?
Does it harm us to do it again?
Push it to the next meeting.
All right, we'll push it to, you want to table it?
That's fine. Thank you. Unfortunately, policy was not able to meet last month, and we have a meeting scheduled for I'm going to tell you right now, because I keep on, Monday, the 23rd. And so we will have a report for next month.
Thank you, Public Relations. Mr. Griffin's on here. Mrs. Levy, anything on Public Relations?
We actually did not meet, so I think we have a schedule for later in the month, so.
Okay. Open to the public.
Sometimes when the superintendent's asked a question at a board meeting, I kind of let it go because we can wait 2 weeks for the answer.
Yeah.
But I felt it was important that I share with Mr. Darian that I have been on the phone with Bergen Tech and asked them, listen, I had a couple questions about Google Meet and whether or not we could black out the other side. I'm seriously concerned about showing people in the classroom. I've asked them what are the other sites. They have gotten back to me in less than 15 minutes every time. So I do want you to know that they are being incredibly responsive. They were the ones that first met and said, listen, from what we're hearing, you're in a good spot, but if you need anything, you reach out and we've got your back. And I did, and 15 minutes later, I didn't just have Rami's answer I had John Hirsch's, who is one of their higher level, because I pretty much said, I need an answer now, and I need your highest trained Google person. What is it? Give me your recommendation. And they did immediately. So I do want you to know they are on their game right now, and they are willing to give us anything that we need.
So I have a couple of questions,
Sure.
though. So, you know,
I opened up Pandora's box, didn't I?
You did.
I have a habit of that.
So, you know, video conferencing has become very popular lately. You know, I spend almost my entire day going from one call to another. So yes, it's very easy to turn off your camera so you know, you don't share, you know, the background of all the kids, because it does get distracting. It's distracting among adults, and so I can imagine it's even more distracting among kids.
I was actually more concerned from a legal perspective than I was about
I get that.
distractibility.
And so, you know, there's the microphone and whether or not the microphone will be on. But, you know, I'm more concerned with, you know, the method of how the information is going to be exchanged with the students. You know, I'm envisioning that the students will watch their teacher give a lesson on the computer, and then later on do their work, you know, on the computer, and probably submit their homework like they normally do. And I want to make sure that that interaction continues, and it's not just where students are given a list of things that they have to learn and a list of assignments they have to complete, and there's not going to be any, you know, back and forth in the classroom, because it's very difficult to self-learn. And as you're a kid, there's so many distractions, and I just think that if we can practice setting up video conferencing before these kids are sent home, and if it works, and I think that'll be great.
There are definitely, that is in our plans. You can visit my office and see the PPH, the pandemic plan. I'll leave out the last word. But we have it. I'm going to be honest with you, it is not my goal in K2. The truth is, we have enough programs and resources that have digital teaching tools. Our math program has videos that accompany every single lesson, that in K2, I'm not going to stress people out, because you know what I'm going to do? I'm putting way too much work on a parent at that point. And my job, as parents who have responded to our tech needs at Oradell School email and said, for this to happen, this is what I need at home, their number one concern right now, why do they need digital technology? Because they're working from home when this happens, and they can't let their child use the computer at that time. So we also need to make sure that we're creating independent activities. I will tell you, I am so proud of our staff. What they did today, and we started with K&1, which I actually thought was going to be the most difficult, they were rock stars. Like, I talked to principals all day long about this. How many hours? How do you know they did this many hours? We've got definitely a compilation of work. We're making smart decisions. We're making decisions not just about giving busy work, but what happens if something doesn't happen at the end of the year, because we've been out for 2 weeks, and now that Unit 12, which the math program doesn't think is very important, but we think is, how does that happen? Every decision we're doing is based on an overall perspective. So I do want to see Google Meet, or whether it's Zoom and webinars in the upper grades, but I'm really going to focus that on the upper grades.
Any other open to the public? Okay, old or new business?
I just have, two things for old new business. The newsletter that just went out, I think we owe credit to Deirdre Yablin. She was very instrumental in working very hard to pull that together, and very open to suggestions, and took it upon herself to figure out a lot of things in order to get this out. So kudos to her. And also just, it really looked neat downstairs in the board office. Somebody put up all the St. Patrick's Day decoration. Eileen. So again, those are all things that make the workplace a special place to be at. So kudos to those two ladies downstairs.
I just want to say, first, I was honored to participate in Read Across America, as I know Mrs. Norian and Mrs. Walker were there as well. They had much better attire than I did. I'm going to have to step up my game for next year. But it is a wonderful thing to have different community members and Board of Ed members and teachers and everybody participate in that, including you. I really enjoyed, I had 2 third grade classes this year, and it was really quite lovely. So thank you for that opportunity. I also know that I think it's wonderful that you introduced yourself in the newsletter, so I'll say for all those people out there watching on video and who have questions, check your mailbox for the newsletter because all the information you're asking about is there. And lastly, I just wanted to thank the administration. As a parent and a board member, I really thought that the email that came home about the technology was wonderful, and I've heard from other people that really appreciated it. I know I spoke to Ms. Bozios. My daughter is pretty insistent that she needs her school computer should there be an emergency, but we will give ours up if another person needs it. So, and also even just the email that came out about having to reschedule or change things, you know, going on in current with that, and I know that it's been very stressful for them, and I appreciate all the efforts that you guys are taking, and the teachers as well. I know in a lot of other districts, they are working half days so that they could prepare for this, and that's not something we've had to do at this point, so I want to thank them for all their efforts.
Mrs. Shapiro?
I also wanted to piggyback on what Robin was saying. I was really also impressed with the technology form. Like, they had all of this done as if there isn't enough going on. And then there was the decision with the school canceling the play to Broadway. And I did have a little guy who was affected. And it's is very difficult decision in these very uncertain times. And I've said to Greg, like 2 weeks ago when we had a meeting, and I was like, well, stay home if you're sick and clean the school. Like, I never envisioned that we would be having this conversation about remote learning. Like, I'm sure your whole career, we have never, ever experienced something really crazy, contagious, and uncertain like this. So I did have to show up at school in the office at the time that a bunch of the other parents had to come, and what could have been very chaotic and stressful was still very well organized and managed, and we were kind of all in this together, and the ladies in the office, like everybody was just, it was nice in craziness. So, we're going to have a little bit more chaos coming up, but, it was because, and then you planned about who was going to donate a ticket if people didn't want, because there were these tickets. It's a long story, but it ended up being really smooth, so really appreciated that. Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of comments and a question for clarification. So just to reiterate the comments that we've just heard, I think it's been that Ms. Bozios has done a great job in terms of acting swiftly and making decisions, and whether they're popular or not. Just going in the face of what's going on right now, I think it's great the decisions they're making, the action plans, and all the work that's going into play right now. But just curious, just to clarify the statements that you said in the beginning. So in terms of, because I think it's on the tip of everybody's thoughts, like in terms of canceling and actually having to go into it, we're waiting on the New Jersey Department of Health to give us guidance, or that's the only thing that's basically going to determine whether or not we are going to close school? Okay. Have they given any guidance with regard to that in terms of like?
No, there's another meeting tomorrow.
Okay. So it sounds like it's an ever-evolving kind of
It just
issue.
seems like, the minute you get a piece of news from them, then there's 5 minutes later, there's something else coming out. So tomorrow there is another meeting, and we'll get a little bit more information. and we'll go from there. And as soon as I hear anything, I will certainly send that out.
Do you know if other neighboring schools or districts are following that same suit? Because it seems like I hear stories about this school is closing, that school is
Well,
closing.
the only schools that are closed right now are some colleges and the county-run schools.
Yeah.
Bergen Technical and the academies are closed right now, but there are no municipal schools right now that are closed.
And they're just
The
doing that based on
The
their
only
own-
closings that have happened this past week have been to clean or to plan in case we have no school. So it's to plan for their plans. But there's no schools that are closed long-term, more than the day to get done what they needed to do. Those were the only closings so far in the schools here in this area.
Ms. Longo, I think you can, we asked that question at the subcommittee level, and I think you did a very good job explaining that if we close, legally, we won't satisfy the state's requirement for the number of days we have to remain open. But if the decision is forced on us, then we qualify for the 180 days.
Yes.
And then in terms of whether or not the school will close, that is a Board of Health decision that we will follow. So we're letting them be the lead on that.
Yes.
And our responsibility is to do all the preparation and the curriculum work and what the teachers are currently and the administration is currently working on now.
Exactly. Of course, we always have our emergency days from the winter that we could use if we wanted to, but that's not, that's our discretion.
So that was actually what I was going to ask. I think we only built in 3 this year, is that right?
Yeah.
So if it were a short term, then we could rely on those? If it's a 10-day or 2-week thing, then obviously we can't.
If the state tells us to close, the days count.
The days
It's
count.
if we decide to
That's it.
close on our own, they don't count.
If we do, and I think some private schools also are closing, and they can do whatever they want.
They can do whatever they want, exactly.
They can do whatever they
Yeah.
want. So just also to clarify, you say if the Board of Health shuts us down, so if they shut us, it would be everyone, like not, or I guess not necessarily.
not necessarily.
Oh, good
I don't
point.
know. Yeah.
They could say you, and you guys are depending, okay.
Because if there's a case somewhere, yeah, so
All
that, we would leave totally up to them for their guidance, which is why they've been very good about
Got it.
passing on news every day. This is, nothing else has occurred, make sure you do this, make sure you do that. They've been very good about that. And yesterday, there was, in NewJersey.com, I think it was a video of all of the Bergen County officers. I don't know all of them, but some of them were all the leaders in Bergen County. And if you go on NewJersey.com, it was a great video with all of them. They took turns talking. I don't know but I don't know who the gentleman was that led it. Mr. Tedesco.
He's county executive.
He's the one that led it, and then there were some other school personnel there from the Bergen Tech, and it was interesting because each one of them was up there telling everyone, what they were doing and what to expect in the near future.
Mrs. Walker?
Just one quick aside. I don't have any children in the school anymore, so I'm not privy to all of the information going home about the technology and the preparation for that. But I must say, in the emails I do receive, one in particular from Ms. Bozios yesterday, and I think Robin alluded to it about the cancellation of the children going to see Wicked. Throughout that whole email, she shared with us almost what she was thinking. If I look at it this way, I'm probably making a mistake. Not that way. I go myself, but I don't want to jeopardize the children. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the bottom line, with the administration and the principal and superintendent and the whole staff really care most about our children and what's best for them. And I think that, if nothing else, we can be just so proud of where we are and who's in charge here. So, and as a board member, thank you for
You have a
all that.
wonderful staff here.
and the staff, absolutely. But we're as good as the leadership, I think. So thank you for everyone here who's in the trenches.
Any other old or new business? I just have one point of business. I think you saw in the packets, we need to move the March 25th meeting to March 18th, which is next Wednesday, because we have to have our first submission to the county for the budget by Friday. So is there anyone that cannot make, will we have a quorum?
It's a week from today.
It's a week from today. We're moving the 25th to the 18th. Did we advertise that yet? Okay.
Yep.
And do we move it on the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Has anyone cannot make it?
No, I was just...
Okay, so next week we have a meeting. Mr. Darian?
Yeah, I'd just like to say one thing, we live in extraordinary times, so sometimes you have to take extraordinary measures, and sometimes extraordinary measures can be very expensive. And I don't want you to think in normal terms, well, I don't know if we should do that. I think you need to just completely wipe off any norms and any normal protocols and just say to yourself, we're in extraordinary times, we need to take extraordinary measures, and if any of those decisions involve the board, I don't want you to hesitate. I will come here for an emergency meeting, to make decisions. If we need to spend, I don't care, $100, $200, $300, $400, whatever it is, $1,000 to prepare for the kids, I think that, you should not hold back, okay? So that's just my opinion, but I think everyone in this board is willing to step in if need be. So I just think that we need to think like, we're in uncharted territory here.
Thank you.
I think that we're all kind of on that same page. Our concern is for the students, for our staff, for doing what we need in order to get things done, and we'll figure out the rest after. Just do what is right.
Any other old or new business?
I just wanted to say, I know that, I'm sorry I wasn't here for your swearing in. Welcome you to the board, VJ. I also wanted to remind you that you can do new board member training through New Jersey school boards. It can be done online, but I personally, and I'm a little selfish here because I'm one of the trainers, but I think that the actual in-person weekend that you spend away is far more valuable. And, but unfortunately, there was supposed to be one this coming weekend. It has been canceled by New Jersey school boards due to the COVID issue, but it will be rescheduled. So you might want to watch your emails to see if you can get in on the new board member training.
His wife is probably very happy about it.
I'll volunteer to help with the children, just as VJ graciously offered up his wife to watch my children during Board of Ed meetings.
I forgot you were winning in that negotiation there.
Any other old or new business? So I need a motion to go into closed session for personnel issues.
So moved.
So motion by Catherine, second by Mr. Walsh. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll be going into closed session. We will not be taking any action after, and not sure how long we're going to be.
Sure, anytime.